So next thing we're going to do is draw a laptop. And I guess you can see where I'm going with this. We're going to draw several devices. We're going to make sure that every one of those devices is drawn correctly and drawn pixel perfectly so that it looks great at small sizes, and we'll keep checking back on those. So with this icon, we also want to go back in the beginning, and we're going to go ahead and do a new layer again. We're going to do guides, and you can see where this organization is going. Really does help later on. You'll see that once we start exporting. So we're going to lock guides. We're going to go into our layer for icon 2. And for this one, we're going to make sure that I'm going to go into outline mode. We're going to make sure that we're drawing along with this screen, but this time we're going to have a laptop. So let's first draw it to the outside using our rectangle tool. And for this one, I'm going to see with a slightly smaller screen but an exaggerated laptop base if we can get the desired effect. So with height of 52.5 pixels, I'm going to come in here. And again, with the eyedropper tool selected, we're going to select the outside corner, the outside edge of this PC screen. We're going to turn the stroke to the inside. We're going to go to shape again. We're going to turn up the border radius to 4 pixels. So it's good to get in the habits of early on when you're making icons. Once you've decided what kind of style and what kind of rounding or straight edges you're going to use, to keep with those consistently and to keep with those as soon as you start making icons. It's easy to forget, oh, did I have it as a 1 pixel or 2 pixel stroke weight, and then later on to have it look a little off, and you might be kicking yourself later because you didn't do that early on. So this can be the beginning of our laptop screen. We're going to duplicate the outside. Always make sure to duplicate your objects in the right order. And by that I mean this is ahead of, this inner screen is on top of the outer screen. And that's important because if I go to do a shape mode and I subtract the front, this is going to get larger, but it's going to subtract out and it's going to delete that. And so in this case, we would want to bring this down. And you can check in real time how these things will look. And we'll probably bring that up to 40, and we'll bring this up to 60. But it's important to make sure that you're checking your icons before you start subtracting them out, because that's something that later on you have to go and rearrange layers around. So layer order is important here. That would be if we were going to make also fill versions of these. For this case, it's just going to be line icons. But now that we have this inside screen, this duplicated rectangle, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to transform this down. So let's try 70 pixels and 52. Let's subtract 10 from that, 42.5. Okay, and let's do that one more time. Let's subtract 5 down, so 37.5 and 65 pixels wide. Okay, so we have this, and we need to turn down the thickness of it. We also need to take away some of this border radius that we had set prior. So we got one on the inside. And let's see. Now we're going to draw the base. And so for this, I'm going to see if we can draw it up to here. And I'm going to do Shift C so that I can drag a single anchor point. And we're going to drag this to the edge. And we're going to do the same on the other end. And when you're dragging it, make sure to hold down the Shift key to make sure that you have a straight direction. It's either going to go up or it's going to go down on a single axis. If you let go of it and you're just clicking and dragging, it's kind of all over the place. But we're going to drag that to here. Now we want to make sure, once we turn off guides, yeah. So what I'm going to do actually now, looking at it, and this is the best part about icon design, is making sure that you look back at things and make sure they're lined up as you had them in your head before you started designing them. So I'm going to do Command Z several times to back up. Now, I'm not going to change this design drastically, but what I am going to do is go into the shape menu, and this is why it really helps in newer versions, is I'm going to unlink the corners. So I'm actually going to have the bottom be straight and the top be the 4 pixels curved corner radius. And so we're going to send this back to the inside. And now what we have is a bit of a better situation for our keyboard. So I'm still going to drag this in. I'm going to do Shift-C again, click the top left anchor point, and just using my arrow keys, I'm going to go over, let's see, 1, 2, we'll do 4. And for this as well, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so now, what I'm going to do as well is draw in a rectangle because we want to fill out this section. We want to let people know that it's negative space. So with M selected on the keyboard for the rectangle tool, I'm going to drag it down to this edge, and we're going to turn the stroke inside again. And I'm going to use the minus key to subtract out the anchor point we don't need. So now we just have the triangle there. One thing to keep in mind is in Illustrator in preview mode, there is a slight oddity when it's drawing shapes that are right next to each other. There's this white line, and you'll see that these are perfectly lined up shapes. There's the triangle cut out, and here's the trapezoid. They're perfectly aligned with each other, but if you go back to preview mode, you zoom out, you'll see that there's this little white line in between. It's just a rendering problem, but it's nothing wrong with the file, and when you save it out to SVG, once we combine these files, you'll see that it actually looks okay. So now we're going to duplicate it, and I do that by holding Option while clicking and dragging an object, and then I hold Shift once I've started dragging it to make sure that I keep on the same axis. So it's really easy. It's easy to get just off by 1 or 2 pixels, but by holding Shift, it locks it in place. Once I let go, I'm going to do Control click, and then I'm going to go down to Transform, and I'm going to reflect. And it's good to turn on preview mode in Illustrator to make sure that you always see what's going on. I'm going to reflect over the vertical axis, and we're going to be able to see that that is looking a little bit better. Now, to make sure that we have some keyboard graphic going on here, I'm going to turn off guides for just a moment. Guides are great, but sometimes they get in your way. When I hit the little backwards slash on the keyboard, it brings up the line tool. And so you can come up here, the line segment tool, and you can click it if you don't want to do the keyboard shortcut. But I am going to draw by holding Shift, clicking, and drawing across here. And I'm going to click Shift-C again to draw this and line it up with our object there. So we're going to do a couple things before we come back and correct the keyboard. First thing is we're going to hold Alt or Option, click and drag this, holding Shift again to keep it straight. We'll drag it to here. So we have another line for the keys. And then we click again, holding it, bringing it down to about here. And what's great is I don't have to make sure these are perfectly lined up so long as I'm using the right tools. If I hold Shift while having selected one layer, I can actually select many. What I'm going to do is going up into Object, under Path, I'm going to do, oh, actually, no, I'm not going, I was going to split into grid. We don't need to split into grid. I was thinking something else. What I'm going to do is under Align, I'm going to make sure Align to a selection is selected and not Align to Artboard. I'm going to make sure that we horizontally center these first, and then I'm going to equally distribute them by their vertical center. So to make sure that all these are perfectly spaced out from each other vertically, and I'm going to click and just bring this down. Make sure that that's equally spaced all around. Bring this up just a little bit. So that's good. And now what we want to make sure though is that these lines actually extend to something that makes sense to the trapezoid shape. We don't want it to be a rectangle within a trapezoid. So I'm going to select the A key, which is doing direct selection. And I'm going to go in first, I'm going to make sure that these are the only objects that we want to select. And so I'm going to lock the others select these with V, the selection tool, and then with A, I'm going to select just the endpoints here. And we're going to bring them in 3 times. And then with A still selected, I'm going to go down and click, drag the others. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to say that for, with A selected again, with just these selected, I'm going to go over 2. A selected again, I'm going to go over 3. Now I want to make sure that these are not too spaced out. So first thing, let's make sure that we have these in the right position. So A on the far right of the second line, 1, 2, and then A on the far right, third line, 2, 3, 4. So those are lined up. Now V again for selecting. I'm going to move this line up 2, and I'm going to move this one down 2, just to see spacing on these. It's looking a little bit better. Now what I want to make sure is that we're also going to go in and we're going to turn the cap to a round cap as opposed to a straight cap. It keeps with the playfulness a little bit more, it just makes it a little bit easier on the eyes. And so we're going to zoom out and make sure that we can see what we're looking at here. More laptop and then more of a desktop screen there. Okay, that's looking pretty good.